Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm going to be showcasing a Pokemon that I have heavily criticized in the past, and that is Shadow ALOLAN Marowak. Now, AWAC used to be a top meta threat in the Open Great League, but power creep over the years has really not been kind to it. A member of my Discord, Dr. Stalemate, recommended that I try out Marowak, and over the 3 sets that I played with it, I went 5-0, 1-4, 5-0. So a very positive 11 wins and 4 losses record, but some very polarizing sets. The meta core that I'm trying to target with the Marowak pick is the core of Shadow Kanto Ninetales plus Jumpluff. To round out the team, I'm using Blastoise as the save switch and my own Jumpluff as the closer. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and we get the dream lead in the first match, Marowak into Jumpluff. My opponent save switches into Licky Licky, and I'm going to respond with my Blastoise. But the team I'm running is an unbalanced one. This team is ABA weak to Kingdra, and it's ABA weak to Jellicent. However, if you're running an anti-meta Pokemon, you're always going to be ABA weak to something, so I'm hopeful that I won't encounter too many of those on the lead. In the meantime, in this mid-game, we have the battle of very bulky rollout users, Licky Licky and the Blastoise. But the good news is my rollout user can boost up its defense with Skull Bash, so I'm able to absorb Licky Licky's damage, fire off Hydro Cannon, and win switch advantage. But unfortunately, this Jumpluff is about to get a nasty farm down. I decide I'm going to play aggressive. I bank back-to-back Hydro Cannons and pivot back into the Shadow ALOLAN Marowak. Acrobatics is going to hurt. They're going to make an Energy Ball after, and I will put up the shield, because where there's a Jumpluff, there's usually a Shadow Kanto Ninetales. My opponent pivots out, and what do you know? In comes the Ninetales, and Marowak is locked and loaded. Bone Club will pick up the 2-hit KO, but my opponent's actually on the non-Shadow Ninetales. Normally, Ninetales are all Shadow, but the non-Shadow will actually barely be able to hang on here. The 2 Bone Clubs barely missed the knockout, but I still feel like Marowak was able to put in some nice work in this first match. Weather Ball will knock me out, but I can bring in my Jumpluff, and with the Skull Bash loaded on the Blastoise, I feel like I have this game won as long as I never go for an Energy Ball bait. I feel like my opponent's only way back in this game is if they end up calling an Energy Ball bait. They actually end up putting up the shield there, so I could have gone for the Energy Ball, but to me, it just felt way too risky. My opponent gets the successful Energy Ball bait, but luckily, they did not get the defense drop. If they did get the drop, I would have had to pivot out into the Blastoise immediately and fire off the Skull Bash, just to ensure that my debuff would be reset. But either way, I believe they're in Skull Bash range here, so this game should be over. They can fire off Acrobatics, dealing big damage, but I can pivot into the Blastoise, go for the Skull Bash, and this should be enough damage. Jumpluff is very bulky, but Skull Bash does secure the knockout, getting us the Game 1 win. Hopping into game number 2, and the fun is over as we lead Shadow ALOLAN Marowak into Carbink. I'm going to throw a Fire Spin, save switch into Blastoise, and my opponent's going to respond with a Ludicolo. Now, this is not a great matchup for Blastoise, but if I can land a Skull Bash, maybe we can flip switch here. I fire up the Skull Bash, opponent no shields, and this is very good. I'm going to be shielding up the Energy Ball as it would still do quite a lot of damage, but they're not an Energy Ball. They're on Leaf Storm. Now, Leaf Storm is quite expensive. That's actually going to allow Blastoise to get the full rollout farm down, winning switch advantage, and that is very good for me. My opponent reveals their final Pokemon in the back is going to be a Mud Slap Shadow Torterra, and I should be in a very good spot. I'm able to get that shield back, pivot into the Jumpluff, in comes Carbink, but this is a very bad matchup for Carbink. Even though I am a flying type, Jumpluff will typically be able to beat Carbink, and that's just because Carbink really doesn't do a lot of damage here. I will put up the final shield because this is the charge stack that would do the most damage to Jumpluff for the remainder of the game. I'm at the back-to-back Energy Balls now as well. The first will probably not be shielded, the second will have to be shielded, and the moment it is, I can go for a ruthless combo play with the Hydro Cannon that I've banked on the Blastoise. So just like that, the Carbink has been completely neutralized. My opponent will still have that Shadow Torterra in the back, but Torterra is going to have a very tall task ahead of it. I'm even able to get a Hydro Cannon as well. This Hydro Cannon hits for nice damage onto the Torterra. Torterra does get the full farm down. And unfortunately, ALOLAN Marowak really didn't get to do much in this game. The opponent was running triple strong to it. I can send in the Marowak. My opponent fires off the Sand Tomb. They get a second Sand Tomb as well, so they will be able to get rid of the Marowak, but there's just no way for them ever to beat the Jumpluff. So I can just send in the Jumpluff, go for the full Fairy Wind down, and we're able to defeat Grasshole. Hopping into the next match, we lead Marowak into Licky Licky. Oh, that's not a good matchup. I'm going to stay in here, though. I want to try and bank a Bone Club and then pivot into the Blastoise. Blastoise is going to be answered with Jumpluff. Now, this is a scenario where I do actually miss not having Ice Beam. Typically in this meta, Blastoise do run Ice Beam because if you're counter switched by a Jumpluff, then you have double super effective damage. But unfortunately, I don't have Ice Beam, so all I can do is fire off the Skull Bash. Energy Ball will still be able to pick up the 2-hit KO here, and I decide that I want whatever chip damage that I can get, so I'm just going to lock into a Hydro Cannon. Hydro Cannon will burn the timer, but I'm just going to stay in and let the Blastoise get KO'd. And Energy Ball will take the knockout here. My opponent only actually go for an Acrobatics, covering for a catch. I bring in the Marowak, they send in Licky Licky, and I pivot out and send in Jumpluff. The non-Shadow Jumpluff does actually beat Licky Licky on even energy, but my opponent is up quite a bit of energy. However, the fact that they're not throwing Shadow Ball here makes me think that they could actually be on Earthquake. There has been a very large increase in Licky Licky's running Earthquake over Shadow Ball, just to try and have better matchups into Pokemon like Tinkaton. Luckily, because they don't have Shadow Ball, I can survive all these Body Slams, make it to the Acrobatics, and that's going to put Licky Licky very low. My opponent's going to farm up, pivoting out. Their final Pokemon in the back is going to be that Jellicent, and unfortunately, I mistime my Charge Attack and give them a free Hex. However, I have a ton of energy stored on the Marowak, so I should still be in a pretty good spot. The fact that I save switched to Blastoise and my opponent chose to bring in their Jumpluff instead of the Jellicent is a stroke of very good luck for me. Because at the very least with Jumpluff, my rollout hits for super effective, my Skull Bash hits for solid neutral damage, whereas if it's the Jellicent, then I'm just completely walled. My opponent should look to switch here, so I just fire off the Bone Club, anticipating that switch in. Now, if they shield, I can just pivot out into the Jumpluff, they're forced to let it go, and from here, there's just no way they can win, so they will resign the match. We see a massive Core Breaker on the lead in the next match, leading ALOLAN MAROWAK into Shadow Swanna. I end up safe switching to the Blastoise, they bank some energy and send out Hisuian Electrode. Another matchup where having Ice Beam would be quite nice. Skull Bash does do huge damage, but unfortunately, even with the +1 defense, I'm just simply never surviving here. They even go for the Energy Ball, not even the Wild Charge is needed, and I bring back in the Marowak. Unfortunately, that Shadow Swanna was able to bank 2 gusts worth of energy and is basically at full health. The Swanna re-hits the field, I overfarm massively with the Marowak, and I go for a daring double resisted Bone Club bait. Trying to get the shield, I'm able to get the shield, I was 1 off the Shadow Bone, and that's going to force my opponent to throw an alignment. But I will take whatever free energy I can get. They throw an alignment once again, they're able to force both the shields, but I need to keep this Marowak around. Now, I farm up, and I decide not to bait. I'm full send at the Shadow Bone, hoping they try and no-shield the Bone Club. Shadow Bone connects, they get KO'd. In the back is Morpeko, and we are somehow going to win against the Swanna lead. I fire off the Bone Club, instantly pressuring away the final shield, and then the reveal, it's Jumpluff in the back. Had they double shielded the Swanna, I would have been swept, but they tried to call a bait. Energy Ball connects, we farm down Morpeko, and we're able to escape with the win. We see a terrible lead in the next match, Shadow Marowak into Shadow Malamar. I'm going to stay in the matchup here, throw 3 Fire Spins, and then save switch into Blastoise. Both Blastoise and Marowak have absolutely terrible matchups into Malamar, but I'm hoping that with energy on that Marowak, I can do well later on. My opponent's going to send in a Shadow Celio after landing that superpower, and I'm just going to be full sending the Skull Bash. Skull Bash into the Celio does get respected, and I'm in a very, very tough spot here. Unfortunately, my Marowak is going to get shredded by Surfs, so I don't really feel like I can bring in the Marowak. Instead, I'm going to do something crazy and send in Jumpluff. Part of the reason I'm bringing in Jumpluff here is, even though I take double super effective from Powder Snow, Body Slam is really not going to do a lot of damage, and usually with Malamar, there's a Tinkaton in the back, so I'm expecting, unfortunately, my Jumpluff is not going to have a lot of play. My opponent will put up the shield, they're going to overfarm, playing perfectly to the CMP tie, so I'm going to have to give up 1 shield, but at the very least, the Celio will finally be neutralized. My opponent even went for the Surf there, trying to cover for a catch, but I just stay on the field. Energy Ball will take the knockout, I'm looking to pivot out, it's going to be that Malamar hitting the field once again, and I send back in the Marowak. Marowak has to put up the shield as they go for the foul play. I'm not quite sure if that's Bone Club range, so I go for the Shadow Bone. In hindsight, I believe that could have been Bone Club range. I'm able to take the knockout. In the back is going to be the Shadow Kanto Ninetales, and unfortunately, because I Shadow Boned, I didn't go for the Bone Club into that Malamar. I'm now going to get outpaced. I am now on my 4 cycle, which is a long way away from a move. I have to try and get a catch to win this game, so I overfarm. I switch it to the Jumpluff, but they're just simply too patient. They're going to farm me all the way down. We got close, but not close enough, and unfortunately, it's not getting any easier as in the next match, we're leading into a Carbink once again. I'm going to save switch it to Blastoise. My opponent banks a ton of energy and then sends in Seeking. Well, Seeking is going to have to give me a shield, or they're going to lose almost all their HP to a Skull Bash. This Seeking is now in absolute shambles. They do not get same type attack bonus on any of their moves, and a non-step Drill Run is not even going to be able to pick up a 2-hit KO onto the defense boosted Blastoise. I'm going to go for an undercharge, hoping to leave them at 1 HP to get 1 extra rollout, but they will put up the shield. While Drill Run will not knock out here, it could allow my opponent to 2-shield D-Gen for switch, and I would rather not let that happen. So I am going to shield, overfarm massively, and then fire off the Hydro. Hydro will easily be taking the knockout here, and I still have a +1 defense Blastoise. My opponent reveals their final Pokemon in the back is going to be a low kick Annihilate. I fire off Hydro Cannon, get the shield, and it's time to get Jumpluff on the field. They throw on 5, so highly likely they are running Ice Punch, and I'm going to look to farm up and wait the turn to ensure they don't get the catch. So I farm up, wait the turn, we're able to land Acrobatics onto the Annihilate, and that is going to be ending the game. Acrobatics picks up the one-hit knockout, back in comes the Carbink, but we've already established that Carbink actually doesn't do that well into Jumpluff. I can spam out Energy Balls, really make life uncomfortable for them, and I still have an entire Alolan Marowak. I do feel a little bit bad. I feel like Alolan Marowak has not really gotten to do a lot this game, so let's bring in the Marowak. We could have stayed in with the Jumpluff and won the game, but let's let Marowak get some damage in. I get to fire up the Bone Club. My opponent was actually on Power Gem, which was very, very surprising to me. Normally they are on Rock Slide for better pacing, but Power Gem or Rock Slide, either way, they're still going to end up losing this matchup. Now I end up waiting down the full timer. My opponent knows it's over, but they're playing it out to the bitter end, and we're going to make the Energy Ball take home the win here, as they just have not enough of a Carbink left over. Energy Ball knocks out the Carbink, and we're able to get that win. We move to the next match. Hopefully Marowak can do better on the lead this game. No, it is definitely not doing better as we end up leading into Mantine. This poor Marowak fighting for its life. I'm going to farm up 4, wait a turn, and get the catch and sneak of the Water Pulse onto Blastoise. This is a pretty big swing of momentum over to me. I'm able to waste energy, but out comes Shadow Kingdra, and this is very bad. The good news for me is that my Jumpluff is incredible so far into their team, as Jumpluff beats Mantine and it beats Kingdra, but unfortunately both their Mons absolutely destroy Alolan Marowak. I overfarm slightly, go for the Skull Bash, and to my absolute shock, my opponent ends up no-shielding. Their final Pokemon in the back is going to be a Shadow Hippowdon, so they are running a team that is triple strong into Alolan Marowak, but importantly, they are triple weak to Jumpluff. I'm going to be no-shielding Weather Ball Rock hits for huge damage, and I fire off the Shadow Bone as they save Hippowdon and catch onto Mantine. But this is genuinely really valuable damage. Now I can send in the Jumpluff, and I just have to ensure that before I knock out the Mantine, that I've overfarmed enough to be able to outpace Hippowdon's residual energy. So Twister, really not going to do much, and I believe 3 Fairy Winds over the next Energy Ball should be enough to win me the game. Energy Ball will take the knockout, back in comes the Hippo. Honestly, I'm not 100% sure how much a Weather Ball Rock here does. Jumpluff is very, very bulky, so I just default assume there's no way it ever KOs from here, but that's not a chance I'm willing to take. So I'm going to be putting up the shield and just firing off these energy balls. I do overfarm by 1 just to slightly obfuscate where my energy's at, hoping that maybe my opponent tries to overfarm or something, but I did end up looking it up after the fact, and it turns out I wasn't even in Weather Ball range. Weather Ball, I think, does about 35%, so I was always going to be able to hang on there and take the win. We move to the next match, leading Shadow Alolan Marowak into Shadow Sableye. Okay, maybe there's a reason why this thing isn't used anymore. We save switch into Blastoise, but my opponent doesn't have an answer, and they send in Shadow Celio. This works out great for me. I do have Skull Bash. They're going to have to give me a shield or give me almost their entire health bar. They end up no-shielding, potentially trying to call that I'm on Ice Beam, but I am not. The Skull Bash landing will allow me to boost up my defense and flip switch advantage, and that means the Sableye is going to get stuck onto the Jumpluff. Celio can fire off Body Slam after Body Slam, but boosted Blastoise does not care. I get the full farm down, I exit with the Hydro Cannon, and my opponent can't even farm down here, otherwise I could make a second Hydro and force a shield. So they're going to be forced to go for the Drain Punch. Drain Punch will secure the knockout, but man, Blastoise just absolutely took over this game. Now I can bring in the Jumpluff and just go for the full farm down. My opponent has already revealed Drain Punch, so I know they're not running any kind of crazy Power Gem tech, so this is a pretty easy no-shield for me. In the back, oh my goodness, they have a Kanto Marowak. So we have Kanto Marowak versus Alolan Marowak. Unfortunately, the Alolan Marowak really didn't get to do anything this game. This was just the Jumpluff show, core breaking the opponent and getting the win. We pick up a very bad lead in the next match, Shadow Alolan Marowak into Altaria. I didn't see a Dragon Breath sneak there, so I wonder if my opponent ended up CMP tying me here. Shadow Bone does do pretty nice damage onto Altaria and get a defense drop, and my opponent did end up going for the CMP tie. Sky Attack lands, I now pivot out, sending in the Blastoise. My opponent is going to bank a massive amount of energy and then send in Corviknight. Corviknight really does not like matchups where it's down energy, because I'm just going to be able to neutrally spam Hydro Cannon after Hydro Cannon after Hydro Cannon. And people like throwing nuke moves at Blastoise. It's very bulky, so I put up the shield, I get the shield call right on the payback, and now I feel like this Blastoise has real potential to just completely run away with this game. My opponent switching in the Corviknight here may have been to try and throw away Marowak's only good matchup, so I will have to be a little bit worried about if Marowak can actually do something in the endgame. My opponent reveals their final Pokemon is going to be a Licky Licky, and that's exactly what they were doing. They were throwing away Marowak's only target, trusting in the fact that with Marowak countered with Licky Licky and Altaria, I won't be able to get the win. But Blastoise was able to get up a Skull Bash. That's really good for me, as now this Body Slam is not going to be able to pick up the 2 with KO. They're forced to overfarm, and that lets me get a Hydro Cannon. So Blastoise again putting in an absolute shift. My opponent waits the turn. That's very smart. Had they thrown 2 of the move there, I would have tried to go for the Body Slam catch onto the Marowak, but they're not going to let that happen. I feel that the only good use of Marowak at this point is just to be a damage sponge, so I bring in the Marowak, no shield as Shadow Ball takes the knockout, and it's going to be the Jumpluff show from here on out. My opponent did store a bunch of energy on that Altaria before pivoting out, so I'm going to have to try and outpace them. In comes Altaria, instant Sky Attack is available. As long as Altaria cannot land a Sky Attack in this game, they cannot get the win. Jumpluff will just simply be too healthy. I fire off an Energy Ball. This is double resisted, but I can fish for a debuff. Shield comes up, no debuff comes through, and I make it to Energy Ball number 2. They're pretty low, but I don't know if this will take the knockout. Energy Ball lands, they survive, we get the Fairy Wind down, and back in comes Licky Licky. But there's just no way out for my opponent. Double Body Slam will not KO here. Shadow Ball won't KO either. I can just get a full farm down at this point. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. All in all, this team ended up being very fun and a pretty enjoyable way to play out this final day of Open Great League. This upcoming week, we have the Master Premier Cup coming up, and I do want to try and focus on Master Premier Cup content if queue times do allow. I know with having Great League every single week this season, people tend to prefer the Great League, and that makes it more difficult to find games in the Open Master League, the Ultra League, and now this week, the Master League Premier Cup. But I'm hoping that people will play the format. It is a more accessible format than either the Ultra League or the Open Master League, just because so many of the good Pokemon are Comday Pokemon. Like, the top Pokemon that you can encounter are mons like Gyarados, Metagross, Florges, Rhyperior, all of these mons that had Comdays, and on Comdays, it's obviously very, very easy to get the XLs to max it. So I'm hoping queues in Master Premier will be pretty good. Master Premier is often a very, very fun meta, and I have a lot of different Pokemon that I do want to try in it. This team being featured really feels like a coming full circle moment, considering that I have been very critical about Shadow ALOLAN MAROWAK in the past. I just really didn't think it had much of any play, and I do enjoy that it has a small niche right now as a fire type that is able to break the Kanto Ninetales plus Jumpluff core. Now obviously it's not the only fire type that can break that core. We've seen an uptick in Turtonator usage because Turtonator does do very, very well into that core and is even a harder check into the Kanto Ninetales because it double resists both of its charge attacks. But I do think it's cool that I was able to kind of take an old, almost forgotten legend of Great League seasons past and still manage to get wins with it. Watching these battles back, I was reminded that, man, it was pretty tough out there for Shadow ALOLAN MAROWAK on the lead. It felt like Marowak lost lead in the vast majority of games, but luckily, that doesn't have to mean a loss. If you're able to well support a Pokemon with a strong backline that can kind of fight from a disadvantageous beginning of the match, then you can still emerge victorious. And Blastoise ended up proving to be a wrecking ball on the save switch, and Jumpluff is just incredibly dependable and actually proved to be a pretty solid core pairing to try and cover those weaknesses that Marowak has. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed watching today's video, a little trip down memory lane with Shadow ALOLAN MAROWAK, please make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And an extra special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide to the channel is so appreciated, so thank you guys so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.